Strategy Show, the Osmo.com MLB Strategy Show. It is a Monday. We've got a nice, sizable 12-game slate. I'm joined by Adam Scherer, who's back in a place you can play DFS. Adam, how's it going?
Pretty good. Excited to be back in Maryland. Excited to be able to spend my entire day making DFS lineups instead of doing other more productive things, I guess. But yeah, excited to be back. How are you doing?
Good, good. I always find those breaks are fun for like the first day, and then afterwards you get the itch to start playing again.
Yeah, no question. It took me until about noon on Friday, and it was just okay. I want to play.
Yeah, especially with the big slates on the weekends and the split slates and all that. But good to
Yes,
take the.
and still doing content too. Like still writing articles, still doing shows.
Oh, you
Just
still have to do the deep dive and all that?
yeah. I did all my content over the weekend, so it was normal, except I just couldn't play.
Yeah, so everybody probably just banked off of your advice, and you
Yeah,
don't
I'm
get to
sure.
reap any of the benefits.
Right, exactly.
All right, so we've got a 12-game slate today, but we're going to look quick at lineup study as we've been doing, trying to make this more of a regular segment. We are, of course, presented by Yahoo, but we're going to look at DraftKings because we don't have Yahoo yet on lineup study. This was a tournament from yesterday, the 555 walk-off home run. Saw a couple of familiar names at the top, a couple of really solid players. Wilson being one of them, and then Petty Theft as well. Those guys finished 2 and 3. So Adam, you said you have that pulled up. Do you see anything interesting or out of the ordinary that any of these guys did that you recognize?
So I have Wilson's in front of me right now, and his looks pretty normal. Granted, I didn't even look at the slate yesterday, so
Reds were
there's
chalk. Reds were pretty good chalk.
okay. Then yeah, his best lineup, his second lineup came in 39th. That was a full five-man red stack, but his best lineup, it wasn't double stacked. It was just a naked five-man Atlanta stack. Had Trevor Bauer finally have a good game. Had Martin Perez at a reasonable price point. Just cheap one-offs with
Yeah.
an expensive Atlanta team. Had Jesse Winker leading off. He was 10% owned, so relatively popular, I guess. Mayfield, a real basically minimum price to second base, and then Maldonado, close to minimum price at catcher. So definitely spent up on one pitcher, spent up on an expensive stack, and then some pretty low upside one-offs. But especially with the way the ball's flying right now, I don't think that's actually as bad an idea as like it used to be. Because it used to be you needed like two home runs from, or you could only get a home run or two home runs from like good hitters. But the way the ball carries now, or the way the ball flies now, you got 33 points from Jesse Winker, you got 19 from Maldonado. You're seeing just not good hitters still capable of hitting home runs.
Yeah. I saw some people complaining in Slack about Winker yesterday. About how he was kind of a fish play, but this says otherwise. Looks like he was over 10% owned, like you mentioned. So the top guys were on him because he was just too cheap. And
Wilson had him in all three of his lineups.
yeah, so that's a pretty good indication that he was a pretty good play because Wilson's obviously one of the better players in the industry, I think, especially for these type of stakes tournaments, like the low. Like he only played 3 lineups in here. It was a 9 max, and he still performs really well when he does that kind of stuff. It's more of a single entry cash player type of guy. And then you look at a guy like Petty Theft, who's more of a max entry kind of guy like Osmo, and he was stacking. He had that same, not same, but a similar 5-man naked Atlanta stack as his best lineup as well. Had your guy Sonny Gray, Martin Perez. That was his 1-2 combo for pitching. He obviously had a little bit more money to spend up on one-offs. So you're seeing Mookie Betts, Jason Kipnis, who homered as a chalkier play. Betts was a chalkier play, and then LeCastro. Looks like he was one of the only people with LeCastro though. I didn't get to him very much, but obviously the Braves stack worked out for him pretty well. Played some contrarian parts of the Braves stack. Freeman was 7% owned. Swanson was under 7 as well. So even though some people were on this stack, same thing with Flowers, he played the parts that weren't super popular. So he was able to play some chalky one-offs and have a unique lineup. We just got
Yeah.
ownership right now as well. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and I think his lineup's interesting because the Braves were relatively popular, but like you said, he had Flowers who was lower owned and Swanson who was lower owned. So that's something that we talk about a lot, how you can stack a popular team and still get a pretty contrarian lineup, within that stack. But also but by doing that with Atlanta, he had popular pitchers. He had a few popular Atlanta guys. He got the really popular one-offs too with Kipnis and Mookie Betts at 33% or 21% and 33%. But then Castro, completely unowned. So, if he had gone, he could have gotten Jesse Winker over Castro, but with Winker at 10 or 11% owned, it would have made a bit of a difference in his lineup too. He would have had basically his every player on his team would have been at least 6%. The whole team except for three guys would have been over 10. So kind of an interesting, Winker's not a big time power hitter. So I obviously have no idea what the intention was or anything, but pivoting off of a guy like that to just get an unowned Astro, at least kind of makes sense, even though it didn't work out.
For sure. Yeah, I think if he plays Winker in this lineup, he probably wins it, right?
Wins by 1 million, I think.
Yeah, so no, he wouldn't have won, I don't think.
Oh, really?
The winner had 231.95, so he would have needed a 28 plus point swing.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
But yeah, he would have put him in second pretty comfortably ahead of Wilson. But yeah, I do like that pivot because Winker was so popular and he doesn't have a ton of power. If everyone's going to one guy, it was an 11-game slate, you might as well just pivot to someone else, even if it's not as great of a play. It doesn't project out quite as well.
Yeah.
It's probably going to work
out. It's pretty interesting. He had 0 Winker in any of his lineup too.
Petty thought, does he play that aggressively?
I'm not sure.
Huh. I wonder if he did that intentionally because he had no reds at all in this tournament. I don't know about other tournaments, but
right.
Interesting to see. Maybe a guy we can look at going forward to see if he's just intentionally fading the chalk stack, as we've seen.
He had a lot of Boston, which was really, really popular.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay, so today we have a 12-game slate. I've already taken one look on this on the Early Bird podcast with Laffy last night, so you guys can check that out later if you want a more short-form podcast. We will go through each game, of course, and probably refer to DraftKings and Yahoo pricing, some FanDuel mixed in as well. But sizable 12-game slate. Please feel free to give us a like. I always forget to ask you guys for likes. If you could give us a like if you do enjoy the content, that would be really helpful. We're going to start off with Philadelphia and Washington, the Nationals. Pitching today, it looks like we have Jake Arrieta going up against Patrick Corbin. I'll put on DraftKings pricing right here. 4.5 implied total for the Phillies, 5.1 for the Nats. Arrieta 7,300. Patrick Corbin is at 8,200. Do any of these guys jump out to you right away, Adam?
Yeah, Corbin does. He's not been as good this season as last season, but he's still been good. And for a lot of this season, you've seen him priced where he would have been last season, up over 10K. And it's been kind of tough because we know the upside that he has, but he's regressed this year from last year. And that's something that I think a lot of people expect. But that doesn't mean that he's not still having a good season. But now you have him at, a really cheap price tag across the industry. He's 94 on FanDuel. He's 42 or 43 on Yahoo, 82, like you said, on DraftKings. Not an appealing matchup against the Phillies, but you're talking about the third highest strikeout percentage on the slate if you include Clevenger, second highest if you don't, at 26.4%. Still a respectable 18.3 K minus BB percentage, 4.02 xFIP. I think his PCRA is a bit better than that. He had 3.91. He's giving up a lot of barrels on batted balls, which is obviously not what you would like to see. Mm-hmm. The strikeout percentage is down from last year. Walk percentage is up. Ground ball percentage is down as well. So pretty much down across the industry across the board from last year. But the price tag accounts for it now. You're talking about him being $2,000 less expensive than we're used to.
Yeah, exactly. It was just weird seeing him at 8,200. For a guy that he still has a ton of strikeout upside, even if he hasn't been the same kind of pitcher we've been accustomed to seeing over the last year and a half or so. He's more popular than I expected in our first run of ownership. I was expecting Maeda to be by far the chalkiest pitcher. Me and Laffy both were. But right now we have Corbin higher than Maeda, so that's actually really interesting. And a couple guys, one guy approaching 40%, another couple guys approaching the 30% threshold right now. And I don't think those guys would be too difficult to figure out. Maybe one of them will, but so Corbin, maybe not as much of an ownership discount as I thought we were going to get, but we may not have JT Realmuto in this lineup. He's got a questionable tag. He wasn't able to play yesterday. I can't remember what the injury was, but Lafayette and I were talking about him possibly not being able to play this game. So that would obviously be a little bit of a boost to Corbin as well. Bruce also has the questionable tag. I don't know that that's a big deal either way as far as strikeouts go. But yeah, it's just hard to ignore Corbin's price here, I think. So he's going to be a guy I get to pretty heavily, assuming his ownership doesn't skyrocket throughout the day. Any interest in Arrieta going up against the Nats bats here?
No, Arrieta's just a guy that I don't really roster all that often. He's got a tough matchup here against the Nats. Almost full strength now. You have Matt Adams back in the lineup as well. He's been really bad against lefties in particular this year. So I think Soto's price tag, $4,500 on DraftKings, is a really, really good price for him. Matt Adams, I think, is a really good play here. Just not missing any bats and giving up power to lefties in particular.
Yeah, I like the Nats. They're one of my favorite stacks that we talked about last night, and I think I'm going to get to quite a few Nationals. We've got some weather concerns here. I haven't read anything about anything concrete about weather just yet today, but just keep an eye on this one. Looks like all the East Coast games have some issues. New York, Cincinnati, etc. So possibly some East Coast storms brewing here. But assuming this one goes, the Nats are going to be one of my higher owned stacks, and I don't think they're going to be a stack that people get to a lot because you've got a couple 5K guys in Rendon and Turner, and you've just got some cheaper teams across the board. And it's not a huge implied total, even though it is a pretty good one at over 5 right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, I'm not sure about anything as far as how my stacks are going to turn out, but not sure, at least on paper, how much I would want to get to full Washington stacks. But for me, the lefties in particular, and then Trey Turner, just because of the ability to run.
Has Arrieta really been struggling this year with
against lefties? Yeah, so I mean, against righties this year, he struck out almost 23%, 281 expected WOBA, 101 ISO allowed. But against lefties, he's only struck out 14.5%, 420 expected WOBA, 238 ISO allowed.
Jeez. And then what about the stolen bases? Do you know off the top of your head? I know
not off the top of my head. I can't remember if he's one of the guys that improved or not. I'm pulling it up now.
So this year he's allowed 8 stolen bases, 12 attempts. So
not like it used to be probably, but still good.
Yeah. Hasn't quite fixed it. Miguel Montero wasn't the issue back in the day, it seems like.
Yeah.
That was a fun
How was that game?
You were at it?
If I remember right, yeah, it was against the Nats. I was at the game.
Yeah, that was a funny one. He got cut. Good old Arrieta. Can't take a little bit of criticism, it appears. But, all right, ready to move on from this game?
Yep.
All right, Tampa and New York. We've got a 4.2 implied total for the Rays, 4.9 for the Yankees. Yanni Chirinos and Masahiro Tanaka on the mound here. More weather concerns, but assuming this one goes, do you have any interest in either of these two pitchers? Tanaka at 8K, Chirinos at 8,800.
I have some interest in Tanaka just because the price point's really reasonable. Tampa Bay has power in their lineup, but they also have strikeouts. Tanaka's numbers this year obviously not as good as in the past, but the price tag takes that into account. It would have been pretty rare last season to get an $8,000 Tanaka in the spot, so I think that it accounts for that. I would rather get the Corbin. I have Corbin projected better, but Tanaka's certainly in the conversation for me.
Yeah, looking at the Rays as a team right now, their active roster 22% K rate. 203 ISO, that's one of the better numbers versus righties this season. 121 WRC plus, it's also up there with like the Twins and the Angels and some other good hitting teams like that. So this isn't like the Rays from a couple years ago. This is a team that is pretty scary. Not one that I want to attack very often here, but do you still think Tanaka can miss enough bats here to be worth it at 8K?
Yeah, I think there are some positive trends in his plate discipline numbers over his last 4 to 5 starts. We haven't totally seen it turn into strikeouts, although we have in some games. He had higher than his season average K per 9 in his most recent start, 3 starts ago, and then 5 and 6 starts ago. But if you look at his plate discipline numbers, the one thing that had really jumped out earlier this season, in addition to Tanaka just not getting strikeouts, was that he wasn't getting a ton of bases on pitches out of the strike zone. which normally he's like the league leader or very close. Over his last four starts, 41.7% in his most recent, 37.5, 37.5, and 53.9% O swing percentage. And for context, league average is usually around 30-ish, 30.5%. For the season, his average is 35.4. So he's been higher than his season average in four consecutive starts now. Over his last four starts, his swinging strike percentage has been 14.9, 10.6, 11, 16.8. The start before that, he was actually at 17.1% too. There were some articles coming out also about his splitter being more effective over the last handful of starts. So I do think he's at least trending in the right direction, even if he's not back to what we were getting last year.
Yeah, and if he's going to be just above 10% ownership or somewhere in the 10 to 20% range, while Corbin's going to be the chalky guy, might make sense to allocate some shares there, at least for an MME type play. So yeah, I am liking Tanaka. The more we talk about him, the more you point out some positive trends in him, and maybe not so much on the Rays here. But are you looking at bats in this game on either side?
Always interested in power here. I mean, Tanaka, even when he was really good, would give up home runs. I think that getting Brandon Lau going into Yankee Stadium is a pretty nice park boost for him. Obviously, has tons of power, can get out in Tropicana, no big deal. But now you get the short porch and left and right for him at Yankee Stadium. So I think Lau stands out. Meadows is expensive, but he's been one of the best hitters in the American League this year. So those are the two that I think I'd be most interested in here.
I like it. Yeah, Lau was the guy that I was looking at pretty heavily here, and then Meadows, 5,200 leading off. I don't know that the Rays are going to be a popular stack either, with just the 4.2 implied total. But I think, I don't know. Last night I was looking at them more and more, but there's probably some better spots just value wise. And then in raw point wise, they're also not going to grade out really well. So I don't think it's going to be a stack that's going to go super under owned or anything, according to the top stack tool when that comes out. All right. Anything else you want to talk about here before we move it on?
I mean, you can go to the Yankees.
Okay.
Like they're they're relatively inexpensive, at least some of their guys. I have respect for Yanni Chirinos, but I also don't think he's a lights out pitcher or anything like that. And it is a park downgrade for him. Aaron Hicks at 4,200 is pretty cheap. Didi at 4,100 as well. Potentially have Encarnacion in the lineup, but that kind of just makes X annoying because he's the same position as Luke Voigt.
What do you think of that trade, by the way, now that we talk about Encarnacion?
I didn't see what the Yankees gave up. I wasn't paying that much attention to baseball over the last couple of days. I mean, it makes the lineup more formidable. I think it'll still come down to their pitching. Like when you look at the other American League contenders, the Astros still have a ridiculous offense. The Red Sox still have a ridiculous offense. So I think it's still going to be tough to bank on just like out hitting anyone because they're so good. But
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't hurt adding Encarnacion.
Just seems like a really nice addition for a team that didn't
Yes.
seem to need one, especially with Judge and Stanton getting somewhat close to coming back.
Yeah, it's going to be just, especially like from a DFS perspective now, it's going to be such a ridiculous difference in how we talk about them like 2 weeks from now compared to right now when it's like, oh, Encarnacion and Judge and Stanton.
Yeah, you'll have Gardner batting ninth instead of fifth like he was the other
Right.
day. So, all right, let's go to the next game. Actually, real quick, looks like we don't have Yahoo ownership just yet. We should have that by the afternoon. There's a bug that needs to be fixed, but if anybody's looking for that, it's not updated just yet. But we'll alert the Slack when that comes out later this afternoon. All right, let's go to the Angels and the Blue Jays. We have Luis Garcia opening. I believe it's Felix Pena coming in afterwards, and then Edwin Jackson going for the Blue Jays. Near 6 implied total here for the Angels, 5.9, and then 4.7 for the Blue Jays. Is there any reason to not go to a bunch of Angels bats here against Edwin Jackson?
No, there is not.
All right, there was no total last night when we talked about this game. We figured it would be the highest on the slate. We were talking about around 6, and it looks like it's right there. Like the prices, man, are they getting Justin Upton back too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a little bit of a boost as well for the Angels. He's under 4K on DraftKings. Everyone's pretty reasonably priced. You're getting Ohtani, his price is finally fixed on DraftKings. He's up to 5,100, and then Trout at 56. But everyone else after that seems to be reasonably priced. So do you have favorite bats you want to go to against Jackson, or is it just full stacks all over the place?
Yeah, I mean, full stacks all over the place. Obviously, the key three would be the middle of that order with Trout, Otani, and Upton. And Upton, you're getting a discount too, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But then do whatever you want. Get Pujols in there, get Calhoun. Like none of the guys beyond them in the lineup are great hitters, but they're better hitters than Edwin Jackson is a pitcher.
Yeah, and there's just going to be so many balls in play. Like an Angels team that just never strikes out. You've got a few good hitters in the middle of the lineup. Yeah, nothing holding me back from playing the Angels here. I'm interested to see what their ownership looks like, especially if we get some more weather concerns on some of these East Coast games. La Stella right now at over 20%. Same thing with Upton, same thing with Trout. So same thing with Otani, actually. So 4 hitters over 20% right now for the Angels, but well deserved against.
Totally guessing right now, but I would guess that I would be under 20% on a $4,700 Listella.
Yeah, I would think so too. Yeah, I wonder how he's going to project out as a value because he's been better, but if you're using numbers from the last couple of years or even last year, he's probably not going to look that great even in the leadoff spot.
Right. I mean, it's a spot where I would obviously be fine with Listella and Angel stacks, but I think like an easy spot where you could get contrarian in tournaments if he's going to be that highly owned, instead of going to Listella as a one-off, go to Brandon Lau for $200 more.
Mm-hmm.
He has more power than Listella. It's a worse matchup, but that's the kind of pivot that you can make and not really even think twice about it because he's just got more power than Tommy Listella does.
I like it. What about Felix Pena? That's the assumed long reliever here for the Angels. Do you like him coming in, second inning, third inning, somewhere around there, and having a better chance to get a win here for, I believe he's 6,700. We don't have it up on the screen right now, but I think he's 6,700.
Yeah, 6,700 on DraftKings. And yeah, I do like him here. Normally, I haven't been going to the relievers that much this year because they've done a really good job of pricing them up. The concern for Pena would be that in his most recent most recent appearance against the Dodgers, he only threw 74 pitches, went 3 2/3. Before that, he went an inning and 2/3, got lit up by Oakland through 61 pitches. But 3 appearances ago through 102. I assume the most likely outcome here is something in the 75 to 80 pitch range. But I do think it's a good matchup for him. The Blue Jays obviously have given us some really good games for starting pitchers all season long. They struggle with strikeouts. They have power, but they don't have a lot of guys that consistently put the ball in play or get on base. And I just think it's a good enough price tag on Pena that I'm interested because those guys never really have ownership in tournaments.
Yeah, I think the Blue Jays are going to be a popular secondary stack for people just because they're cheap and they've got a near 5 implied total. So I don't think that many people are going to be on Felix Pena. I wonder if any of the Blue Jays are popular right now.
So just kind of looking at who's around them, the one thing that will make it hard to get to Pena, on one hand, it will certainly make sure he's really low owned, but on DraftKings, he's $300 more expensive than Miles Mikolas against Miami. And the thing that makes it tough, I think, to get to Pena isn't even that Mikolas is facing Miami, and it's certainly not that I think Mikolas is good, but Mikolas is almost certainly going to throw 20 plus pitches more than Pena, unless Pena repeats the 102 pitches, which he's done, I think, once this year.
Yeah. So that'd be the issue there with Pena. That's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out as far as ownership once we get closer to lock. Real quick, $4,200 Edwin Jackson. You talk about playing these pitchers when they're this cheap and they're stretched out. You'll kind of just be okay playing a little bit of them. Is he a guy, are you making an exception? Are you going to him at all, or is he just a complete avoid because he can't really miss bats?
I'm really, really hoping I don't get any Edwin Jackson. Looking at my baseline projection, I don't think I will.
Yeah, I don't think I will either, but just thought I'd bring him up in case.
Yeah, it's also just easy enough. I mean, with Mikolas, with Eliezer Hernandez, who obviously we'll talk about, there's enough cheap pitching options that I don't think I'll need to get my 2 points from Edwin Jackson.
And there's not a stack or 2 stacks that are going to be popular or something. There's no Coors on this slate where you've got 5 guys at 5K plus where you need to even really get to a Jackson. So I think I agree with that. All right, so let's go to Houston and Cincinnati. We've got Wade Miley going up against Luis Castillo. Miley is 8,400, Castillo at 10K, 4.1 implied total for the Astros, 4.5 for Castillo and the Reds. Some weather concerns here. But honestly, I'm not really looking at pitching too much. Castillo at 10K going up against this somewhat watered down Astros lineup. Do you have any interest there?
I have some just because I think he's a really good pitcher and the lineup isn't as good as normal, but it's still a tough strikeout lineup. It's still a tough matchup. I do think he's really good. A 3.2 ECRA is good. 29.1% strikeout percentage. The walk percentage is high, but he has done a really good job this year of not allowing hitters to barrel balls, and he's seemingly really improved his command, not getting blasted by left-handed hitters like he used to. So any Castillo I get to, I'd be happy with. But with Corbin being so much cheaper and with a relatively good mid range of arms, I just don't think I'll get to a lot of Castillo.
Yeah, I was looking at where the Astros were striking out at versus righties, just to see if it had been similar to years past, because they've had a handful of injuries and stuff with Springer and Altuve and Correa out for extended time. Right now, they're striking out at 16.6%. That is the lowest in the league versus righties, their active roster on the season, which is kind of crazy. So that was my
Yeah.
issue with Castillo. I mean, I know a guy that can miss a ton of bats. He's obviously a really solid pitcher, but 10K for him here seems tough when you talk about some of these cheaper options against a team that
Yeah.
is really tough to
And
strike
the
out.
Astros, so on one hand, it's a benefit, and on one hand, it's not. The Astros are likely not to have Jordan Alvarez today since they don't have a DH,
Mm,
which would take a really good hitter out of the lineup, but it also would take one of their only strikeout bats out of the lineup.
yeah, because he's projected to be like a 25 plus percent
Yeah.
strikeout guy, right? Okay.
Yep.
All right, and then Wade Miley at 8,400 against these Reds here. Looks like we got a bunch of cheap Reds as well. Are you going to Miley first, and then which of these Reds bats stick out to you, if any?
I'm not planning on going to Miley. He's just more expensive than I would like. He's been good this season, but it's more so been in terms of limiting damage and power than strikeouts. He's only struck out 18% of righties. You're going to get an almost entirely right-handed lineup here. So again, he has been good. He's allowed a 170 ISO, 147 expected ISO, but a 283 expected WOBA. Huge park downgrade though. Houston outside of home runs to left field, Houston's a good park for pitchers. Not the case here with Great American. I think that Eugenio Suarez is one of the best values at 4,100. Puig is okay at 4K. You get cheap guys like you said with Kurt Casale, Jose Peraza. Not the most exciting bats, but cheap bats in Great American. But Suarez is the one that I would definitely be prioritizing here.
Yeah, love Suarez here for 4,100. He's going to be a popular one-off guy or in a mini stack with him and Puig or something like that. But I've got no problem with that on a big 12-game slate because Suarez versus a lefty at 4,100 is crazy if the lefty is not Chris Sale or one of the elite guys
Yep.
or something like that. So, yeah, not really looking at too many red stacks right now. I doubt I'd get there. And then same thing with the Astros just because I think Castillo's really good and I'm not seeing wild prices here for the Astros. Do you have are you looking at them at all?
No, not really. If they were cheaper, then I think you could get there. But I just have a ton of respect for Castillo. It is a great park. Um, I just don't really know where I'd go in this lineup. Like Gurriel is cheap, but I don't really want to take a guy with his power numbers at first base or third base. Chirinos is really expensive. Tyler White, I guess you could go to and try and get a cheap home run, but he's just been awful. It's just not really a spot that I want to get to.
Mets and Braves, we have a 4.1 implied total for the Mets, 5.1 for the Braves. Zach Wheeler going up against Mike Soroka, two guys that I thought looked pretty overpriced last night, or a little bit overpriced. It's 86 degrees in Atlanta. Looks like a pretty good hitting environment. I don't know that I'm gonna get to either of these guys, but do you have a different take here, Adam? Are you getting to Soroka or Wheeler here?
No, Soroka's has the 13th highest strikeout percentage on the slate, and he is $10,500. So that's not something I'm going to do. If he throws a complete game shutout, he throws a complete game shutout. But I don't like rostering pitchers that you need to be efficient and really deep into a game to get the score that you need at their price point. Because Soroka's strikeout numbers haven't been there. He doesn't project as a high strikeout guy. He's a command guy that limits hard contact and limits damage against him, which is really good, but it doesn't translate to a $10,500 fantasy price tag. So I'm not going to Soroka here. Wheeler on one hand is kind of interesting because he does have the third highest strikeout percentage on the slate. I do think he's a good pitcher, but on the other hand, it's a really tough matchup against Atlanta, and I just don't think he projects that well relative to that cheaper price range of guys, especially with Corbin being $1,000 less expensive.
Yeah, I think Wheeler would be a guy I might get to as a pivot off of Maeda if he becomes the really, really popular guy in that range. Just because Wheeler is really talented, he can get swings and misses. Um, but even still, it's not a good strikeout matchup for really either side. And I like what you said about Soroka. I mean, I hate trying to get guys that you need to go 7, 8 innings, and you're looking for a handful of strikeouts. Like that's just not something I'm interested in, especially at 10-5 here. Um, so I'd be more likely to get to Wheeler. Just hope he has his best stuff and he gets you 6, 7 strikeouts in 6 innings. Like I'd rather go to Castillo, who's a guy I don't really like, than Soroka, and save the $500 just because Castillo's a guy who could give you 6 innings, but more than a K per inning and be valuable for that price.
Right, Castillo's got the highest strikeout percentage on the slate, so there's automatically some interest there.
Just annoying trying to like watching these players also, like guys that can't get swings and misses. Like I just hate playing guys like that. So
Yeah,
you just need a guy that can get you out of jams, get strikeouts, rack up points quickly.
yeah, and Soroka also, he has been good, but his underlying numbers aren't as good as his actual numbers. I mean, he's got a 1.92 ERA. His PCRA is 3.56, so it's 1.6 runs worse. It's still good, but it's just 1.6 runs worse than what he's actually done so far. He's got one of the biggest gaps out of qualified starters so far. So um, it's just, yeah, he's not going to putting up a 1.9 ERA, and he's not likely to start striking out more guys.
Just not a 10-5 pitcher. I mean, that's
Exactly.
all. Any bats here that you are looking at?
I mean, Robinson Cano's $3,000 on DraftKings. You should get probably 2 at bats in 5 innings before he leaves the game with an injury.
Yeah. And 3K. That's going to be a guy people play, right? That everyone's going to go there just because of how he's going to project in optimizers.
Yeah, most likely. And I think it's fine as a value guy, but don't get too excited because it is a matchup.
Yeah. I'm not looking at much of anything here. So I doubt I'm getting to either side for pitching very often, and then bats too. Not guys that I love attacking. All right. Here's a more fun game. Cleveland and Texas. We have Mike Clevenger going up against Lance Lynn. 5.1 implied total for Cleveland, 4.5 for Texas. These are pretty low implied totals for a game in Texas that's going to be near 90 degrees. I had not realized how good Lance Lynn had been this season. Like just looking at his game logs, he's been going 6+ innings. I think his last 6 or 7 starts, he's getting 5 to 10 strikeouts in all those starts. Got up to 11 one game. He's going over 100 pitches each of his last 5. I guess I just haven't really played a lot of slates with Lance Lynn, or I haven't noticed how good he's been. But do you think this is real, and do you think he's playable here with a 5.1 implied total against?
Yeah, I think it's real. No, I don't really want to play him here. In his career, he's always been better against righties. Over the last year or two, especially this year, he's done a better job than in the past of limiting production from lefties. So far this year, a 302 expected WOBA, 139 ISO, and his expected ISO is even lower at 116. But still striking out 19.7% of lefties compared to 31.1% of righties. So from a strikeout upside standpoint, which is really what we're looking at now that his price tag has risen so much. It's not like we're talking about him being 7K anymore. You actually need those strikeout games to be happy at this price point. You're going to want right-handed heavy lineups that strike out. And the Indians have a left-handed heavy lineup that doesn't strike out a ton. Their projected lineup has 7 lefties in it. So that's not really the most appealing spot for Lynn. Then you factor in, the ballpark obviously doesn't make things any easier. Could he have a good game and go 7, 8 innings and pick up 6 strikeouts, of course, but it just doesn't project as the best spot for him, and that's really what I would want when you're talking about him being $9,500.
Yeah, that's a good point. Probably a little bit too expensive against this lineup. Maybe $9,500 against a different looking team might be getting there more often.
If he was facing Toronto, I'd be all about it.
Yeah, I like that. Any bats? Or actually, let's talk about Clevenger quick. 8,700 coming off a couple of rehab starts. He went 59 and 67 pitches, if I remember correctly, at the AA and AAA level. Is he a guy, like, can we play him on this side for 8,700 here? Or is he just not stretched out enough?
I would really like to, but I just don't think I can bring myself to do it. 67 pitches in his last outing. Like, even if he gets to like 80 or 85 here, it's hard to imagine that they just, let him go. I mean, there's no reason for them to. And even if he gets to 80, 85 pitches, you're talking about a guy, for one, who's never been very pitch efficient. He is really good, gets a lot of strikeouts, but for anyone who's ever, watched him when they're rostering him, it's not one of those guys where it's just like, oh, strike one, strike two, strike three, like next guy's up. It's normally a lot of pitches. So if he were cheaper, I'd have more interest. I just don't think I can pay that price tag, because you really need him to just be K-ing guys on like 4 pitches at this price tag, assuming he's going to throw like 80 pitches.
Kind of like Soroka, like he just has to be perfect to pay off at this price almost.
Yeah, like in a completely different way than Soroka, but yeah.
Like efficiently striking guys out, which is even tougher to do than just getting deep into games.
Right.
So yeah, I think I agree with that. Bats on either side, we've got a 9.5 total. It is a really good hitting park here, but looks like 2 pitchers we're not wild about targeting against. The only guys getting ownership on either side for bats, Lindor and Ramirez, both over 10%. Clevenger actually is getting 11% ownership. I did not really see that coming, but maybe that goes down, maybe that goes up. I'm not exactly sure. But looks like some low-owned bats across the board. Either side you're looking at?
I think there's some really appealing pricing on the Indians. Jason Kipnis on DraftKings is $2,700. Obviously not a great matchup, but does get the park boost. He is really cheap. He'd be the pay down guy that I go to over Robinson Cano, who we'd mentioned.
Man, Kipnis was 15% owned yesterday, and if you just look at his game logs the last 2 weeks, he was god awful. People played him as one of the chalkier options and got rewarded. So interesting there. I'm assuming people go right back to him, but right now ownership is not showing that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that at the very least he's your cash game second baseman at $2,700, $8 on Yahoo as well.
Especially if he's batting cleanup, yeah.
Right.
All right, and then Rangers bats. Are you looking at them as a stack, just hoping that Clevenger doesn't really have it, or are they kind of an avoid for you?
No, I was gonna say I think that's the most appealing way to approach it, probably. If Clevenger is on, there's nobody in the Rangers lineup that looks like a good matchup. But if Clevenger's rusty, which certainly could be the case, then they're all in a good spot. So probably looking to stack or fade.
All right. I think I agree with that. Red Sox and Twins, we've got Rick Porcello going up against Jose Barrios. 4.7 implied total here for the Red Sox, 5.4 for the Twins. Porcello at 7K going up against this really, really tough Twins lineup. What are you doing with that on either side?
Give me some Twins. Porcello's done a reasonably good job of pitching this year, I guess. At least, I mean, my standards for him coming in were pretty low. So 156 ISO allowed the lefties, but a 203 expected ISO. Just a 5.9% swinging strike percentage to lefties, though. 15% strikeout percentage. You have a ton of power lefties here with, Kepler, Polanco, Rosario. Gonzalez has some pop. Castro has some pop, especially if he's going to be able to put the ball in play, which he will against Porcello. And then to righties also a 199 expected ISO. So just a lot of, allowing some power, allowing enough power where I'm certainly interested in the Twins. I expect that they'll be pretty low owned because they're pretty expensive. The top 5 hitters in their projected lineup are all at least 4,700 on DraftKings. 2 of them are over 5K. So you have to be taking some savings elsewhere, which should keep their ownership down. But I think it's a really high upside spot.
Yeah, I like the Twins quite a bit. Anytime they're going to be not one of the chalkier stacks on the board, I've just been playing them because their lineup's just so tough. You look at them as a team versus righties. Incredibly tough matchup for any pitcher, especially a guy who, at this point in his career, isn't missing bats, especially against lefties. So give me some Kepler, Rosario, Polanco. I love those guys. And then Nelson Cruz, I know it's against a righty, but I'll pay $5,300 for him here, especially if I'm stacking up the Twins. So I'm hoping this is a team that is going a little bit under-owned because I think it's a fine spot against Porcello. It's good weather. Wind blowing out a little bit as well might give a little boost to the ball. And I just like stacking up these Twins, especially this season. Barrios at 10-3, that's got to be a guy we're not really looking at, right, against the Red Sox.
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, he's better at home throughout his career, but the Red Sox are also good. And again, it's not even that there's necessarily a couple of guys in that mid range that I feel great about in terms of confidence level, but there are just so many guys that project reasonably well for their price tag that it's going to be tough for me to be paying up a lot because I would rather just be spreading my exposure across that price range and looking to get whatever guy does well instead of costing myself exposure to those guys and paying up for no real reason.
Yeah. Barrios, man, he's only striking out 22.4% of righties this season.
Yeah, his numbers this year are weird. He kind of reminds me of Max Fried, where he's got the stuff to rack up strikeouts, but the strikeouts are down, and then the walk rate is like through the floor from where we expected it to be. So it kind of just seems like he's changed his approach, I guess.
Maybe pitching to contact more, not trying to strike everyone out type of thing.
Yeah, because it's 2019 and some teams still haven't figured out the strikeouts are good.
Yeah. Just reduce some variance. Don't put the ball in play. But yeah, the Twins. Yeah. I don't think
the Chris Sale approach. That was a frustrating season.
Was that 2 years ago?
2 or 3. I think it was the last year at the White Sox.
Okay. Yeah. I don't understand that approach at all. But Twins aren't. I don't think are one of the sharper organizations in terms of caring about stats. So not really surprising there. But any bats against Barrios? Looks like Benintendi has a questionable tag. That might be a guy I would get to at 4,200. But anyone you're heavily targeting against Barrios?
Yeah, I actually like the Red Sox here because people will most likely stay away since Barrios is good, but they are really priced out. Like they're priced like they're facing Chris Sale or something. Mookie Betts is $4,300 on DraftKings. Rafael Devers is $4,400. Both of those really stand out. Betts in particular. I mean, one of the best hitters in baseball at like a mid-range price tag. I don't care who he's facing. He gives you a lot of upside there. And then Devers just, hitting the hell out of the ball right now. And by right now, I mean for the last like month plus. And he obviously has the pedigree. He was a former top prospect. So I think that he's a reasonable play. Tougher to get to him though, just because you do have to compare him to like, Suarez in Great American against Miley at a similar price tag.
Right. That'd be the only issue that I would have. It's just going up against a better pitcher than Wade Miley and cheaper Suarez versus a lefty. But as a pivot, I like that a lot because it is a good hitting environment here. And if Barrios isn't going to miss as many bats as he has been in years past, then it might be more viable to take hitters against him more often at least.
How is he? Do you remember off the top of your head how he is at holding runners?
I thought he was average. I think you and Josh asked me to look this up. I think he's a little below average, actually. He's definitely had some issues in some years. I know that.
Off the top of my head, I was thinking he's either really good or really bad. But I don't know. I have it's slowly loading right now.
I've got him at, for the season, 8 stolen bases allowed, 1 caught stealing.
Yeah. So he's allowed as many steals this year as he allowed all of last season.
Wow. Who are these against? Tampa allowed a couple. Baltimore. Yeah. I was thinking maybe there's like a KC game in where he just allowed like 3 or 4 stolen bases, but no, he's allowing them to everyone. It looks like so. Maybe
Looks like he grades out pretty average though. Point being that at the very least, Betts can steal. Maybe not a spot where he's a lock to, but he certainly has that upside as well.
Is he a cash option for you? 4,300 for Betts?
Yeah. It's tough because like he's one where it would really depend how the lineup build ends up going. I don't want to say that on a 12-game slate I'm like he's one of my first guys in, but at the same time he's clearly one of the most underpriced hitters in terms of talent.
Yeah, I just wonder how many people get there in cash just because you've got Trout and Ohtani you got to pay up for,
right?
Depending on who the popular pitchers are. But it's interesting. He would definitely be in the mix for me if I was making a cash lineup really on any site.
Right. Like if I were like giving someone a player pool of like these are because it's always tough because the way I think of cash games is like you're playing what you think is the perfect lineup. So I hate when people are like, oh yeah, he's a cash option because, there's at the end of the day, there's like a cash option at each position basically. But As far as building goes, like I think Kitness is the guy that you're just like putting in at second base. I think you're just putting in Trout. I think you're just putting in Otani. Betts would certainly be in that very small pool of guys where, as I kind of am finishing out the lineup, it's like, okay, I would like to get Mookie Betts. There might be a better play. I'm not sure right now. I would definitely say Trout and Otani are priorities over him.
Yeah, I think because we've talked about guys that there's a one or two options at the position. Like you mentioned, Kipnis. We talked about Suarez being super underpriced.
Right.
Yeah, it does just depend on where you go for the pitching. So, yeah. All right, let's go to the next game. But before we do that, if you guys want to get in this rake-free contest over on Yahoo, 0% management fee. It is a $4,500 prize pool, $3 to enter, $30 to max enter. Obviously, you can only fit in 10 lineups. In this contest, you don't have to deal with the pros like the Asimos, the Toms, Adam, max entering 150 lineups. So a little bit easier to win over there. And of course, rake free is you can't really beat that at this point unless Yahoo's running more guaranteed overlay tournaments like they did for the NFL season. So you're not going to find a better tournament. Go play over there. There's only a couple hundred spots left. 1.3K out of 1.5K filled right now. So go get in that. It's just the best tournament. You're not going to find a better one. We're, of course, presented by Yahoo, but that doesn't change the fact that that is the best tournament in the industry right now. So, and don't be afraid to give us a like as well, as Josh says. Marlins and the Cardinals, we have a 3.3 implied total for the Marlins, 4.8 for the Cardinals. Elieser Hernandez going up against Miles Mikolas. We've got some chalk here, Adam. Mikolas, a minus 200 favorite right now, going up against the Marlins. We've seen this work in recent days with pitchers that are arguably worse, and a guy like Michael Wacha. We've seen it work out really poorly with Mikolas in the same matchup, actually. But what are you doing here? What do you plan to do with Mikolas, 9 hours before lock?
I think I'll be getting there. I'm not happy about it, obviously, because I don't think Michaelis is very good, and I hate rostering pitchers that I don't think are good as chalk. But it's just a case of him clearly being underpriced. No matter how good or bad you think a player is, they have a price point where they become a good play, and $6,400 against the Marlins is the point. So I'll suck it up and get there, and then complain about it to anyone who will listen about how bad I am for playing Michaelis when he scores 5 points.
Yeah. Do you think I just don't know, like median projection? I think Michaelis does well here more often than not. Like I think he gets you into the 13 to 16 point DK range, and that might even be fine at that ownership.
Right.
I'm not always concerned with playing pitcher chalk really, unless I just think it's completely wrong. But I think Michaelis grades out as a fine play. He's going to grade out in every projection system as one of the better values, just because he's a huge favorite. So the win equity's there. The Marlins strike out against righties. They don't have power, so he'd be one of the more safe options. But he just, like, the way he breaks the slate here is like 6 innings with 6 Ks and, no runs allowed or something like that. But I just don't know how often he does that here, where you, like, need to have him at 6,400. So that's kind of me trying to talk my way out of playing Michaelis this far out from lock.
Yeah, so that's how normally I get myself away from Michaelis. But the thing is, and you mentioned it, normally he's a guy who comes out, he grades out well in optimizers, at like 7,200 or whatever, because his median projection is solid enough for that price point. But his range of outcomes is like a lot flatter than pitchers that have more volatility because of strikeouts and stuff. But he's so cheap here that his median projection is like the top pitching play on the slate in terms of point per dollar. And even though he's not a volatile pitcher and doesn't strike guys out, he still has some upside. And so it's like if he gives you his median projection, and then you also combine that with the bats that you're able to get because you save so much money on your SP2 pitcher spot, even if he gives you his median projection and gets you in the mid-teens, it's like, okay, like that's really good. But then if he does do whatever upside he does have, if he reaches it, in addition to the bats that you got, it's just really, really hard if you don't have him. To me, the most logical way, if you're single entering or playing 3 max or playing 5 lineups in a huge field or whatever, and you don't want Michaelis, but you do. I think the most logical way to get around it is to keep a similar roster build to a Michaelis team, but then just take a chance on like a Tommy Malone or an Eliezer Hernandez or something, guys who are not going to project as well and are not going to outscore Michaelis all that often, but who will also be low enough owned because of how much ownership is going to be concentrated on Michaelis in that price range. That's the way I think that I would approach it. If I, especially, single entry and three max, like you're still playing as many lineups as everyone else is. But if you're someone who, like I used to do, is playing like 10 lineups in these large field tournaments where you kind of just need to be on a stand somewhere and hope that it comes through. I think that's a spot you could take one just because, Michaelis isn't the highest upside guy, and you certainly could get an extra 4 or 5 points from someone like Malone or Hernandez on any given night.
Yeah, and I think more importantly, I don't think you need to leverage against Michaelis. Like if you're doing something like that, you make a similar build. So you make your angel stack, or whatever, your chalk stack. You put in Michaelis, but then you take out Michaelis. Maybe you do a 2v2 swap with Michaelis and Hernandez, or Michaelis and Malone, as you mentioned, or you try to get up to like Mike Fiers, or just someone you're not as comfortable taking, and just get the same roster construction. I like that call quite a bit.
But to reiterate, I'm just eating Michaelis, I would assume.
Yeah, for 150 lineups, you have to have some Michaelis here. There's no way around it, unless you're just Xing him
what's
out.
our projected ownership on him right now?
He is
28%. Like I think that's if he comes in at 28%, I would think that I'm even or higher. If he gets up to like 40 or something, then I would think that I start to be mixing in some other guys.
I think he's going to be higher than 30.
So do I.
I don't know if he's going to get to 40, but yeah, I mean, he's going to be popular. He's going to be one of the more popular plays in the slate. But
and I think in cash he's your SP2. It's just a matter of if you're going like Corbin or Duffy at SP1.
Right. What about Hernandez on the other side? Is he a guy you would take a shot with at under 6K? A guy that showed some strikeout upside, learned how to strike guys out in AAA over this last year, like Lofty said last night. But is he a guy you're targeting at all for under 6K?
Yeah, I rostered him in, I think, the same matchup last time. He was 5K.
Oh, it was against the Cardinals. Yeah.
So I mean, it's a scary spot for sure. The Cardinals have good hitters. He's still affordable. The strikeouts were certainly there in AAA. I do want to dig more into, if pitches look different than they did in the past. But we had talked before his start against the Cardinals last time that the AAA numbers are especially interesting because last year, obviously, he didn't strike guys out, but he hadn't pitched above high A ball before last year, and he had barely even pitched at AA. So he kind of just went straight from the low minors into the majors. And so I'm willing to just completely throw out what he did if I have a reason to think that he's made improvements, since then. And his AAA numbers clearly suggest that he has. I'll be interested to see if I can find anything on Brooks Baseball, digging into him a little bit more. But at 5,900, assuming he's not going to have much ownership because Michaelis is going to garner so much attention at that price range, and right now we have him projected for 4%. I'm more than happy to take some chances on him.
Yeah, I like him if he sticks even below like 10%.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have over the field on Hernandez. Bats here on either side. You got a near 5 implied total for the Cardinals, but that probably has a lot to do with the Miami bullpen, if I had to guess. And then any leverage bats going up against Michaelis that you're targeting. Granderson at 3,400 pop for you?
Yeah, say Granderson would, or I guess, a really cheap JT Riddle. Michaelis has just been really, really bad with left-handed power, even going back to last year, but especially this year, 271 ISO allowed. So lefties are the most appealing spot. Of course, the Marlins only have probably 2 of them. But I think that Starlin Castro would be kind of an interesting play. He's basically the same price as Jason Kipnis. He's going to be a fraction of the ownership. He gets you some leverage. Not that I think he's a high upside player or anything, but he's really, really cheap, and he's not going to be popular. So yeah, I mean, if you wanted to get some cheap Miami, it's fine, but I'm going to just end up with more Michaelis, I would think.
I don't think I'm going to end up with much Miami. It'll be some Granderson, just as a nice value outfielder play, and then it'll come up when I grade out for leverage as well.
Yeah. Stacking the Cardinals, though, I don't think is a bad idea either. Hernandez is still a huge question mark, but most importantly, the Cardinals are really cheap and they still have a lot of talent. Carpenter's not having a great year, but he's still Matt Carpenter. He's still inexpensive. Goldschmidt's 3,900 on DraftKings. The Young, his price came up a bit, but he's still at 46, which is fine. Gives you a relatively cheap catcher option. They're just a good offense that can win a slate any given day.
All right. Let's go to Baltimore and Oakland. We've got Andrew Cashner going up against Mike Fiers. 3.6 implied total for the Orioles. 5.5 for Oakland. This total has come up in the last 12 hours or so. But we've got Fiers at 7,700. Minus 220 favorite almost against your Orioles. Is he a guy you're going to get to at all as a pivot off of Duffy?
Yeah, right now we have him projected to be popular too. Like, not as popular as Duffy, but to be popular.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think Fiers is fine. The thing that scares me here is that you're talking about a fly ball pitcher that doesn't strike a lot of guys out. The Orioles don't have a lot of power, and they do have a lot of strikeouts, but it scares me. Sorry, this game is in Oakland. I was thinking it was in Baltimore. Okay, I take all of that back. Yeah, I like Fiers.
Yeah.
I was just envisioning fly balls landing in the first row at Camden Yards.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
not the case. Never mind.
Pitching in Oakland here, Pitcher Park, against these poor Orioles bats. I'll probably get to some Fiers. I just missed him on the ownership projections. I didn't see him up top there with Corbin and Michaelis and Duffy. But if he's going to be super chalky, I don't know that I'll get to 24 or 25% Fiers, whatever he's at right now. But
right. So to me, the point you were making about Michaelis and having the limited range of outcomes and projecting well as far as medium projections go, that for me it holds true more to Fiers here because he is 7,700, and if he goes out there and gets you 16, 17 points, it's okay, but you're going to beat that. Some other pitchers on the slate are going to beat that. You need him to actually give you that 6-7 innings, 7 strikeout game.
Right.
To really be happy you rostered him. And he has the lowest strikeout percentage on the slate, except for Edwin Jackson and Gerson Bautista. So certainly some reason for being underweight on a $7,700 pitcher with a 16.7% strikeout percentage.
Yeah, just not getting swinging strikes, not really getting chases, below average in both of those categories. So, man, I don't know if I'm going to get to a lot of Fiers, especially if he sticks at this ownership. He'll probably get filtered out for me, even though he's going to project out okay for 7,700. What about bats against Cashner here? $6,200 for Cashner. I would imagine we're probably not getting there with Michaelis on the slate. But are you interested at all in these Oakland bats that are pretty cheap outside of Olsen at 4,800?
Yeah, I'm not thinking I'll get to Cashner just because, like you said, Michaelis is on the slate. Not a lot of strikeouts for the Athletics, and Cashner has really gotten beat up by righties this year. He's allowed a 414 expected WOBA, 245 ISO. If this game were in Camden Yards, like I thought it was, I would love Oakland. Still, I like them. The price tags for the most part are pretty affordable. You still get a terrible Baltimore bullpen. Steven Piscotty looks like he may be back, hopefully. I think that Oakland's fine. Chris Davis, I think, stands out as a really, really good option. I really don't know why he's still so cheap, but he is. Piscotty's cheap if he's in the lineup. Chapman gives you some upside. So yeah, I think that it's a perfectly fine spot for Oakland.
Just some pretty obvious value here for Oakland. I don't know. Yeah. It needs to be talked about a ton. You can take one-offs against Cashner. You can full stack, even though it's maybe not as profitable as the amount of times people full stack against Cashner. But
right, he's not someone that I actually like stacking against. But it's more so just that you get so much upside stacking against the Orioles, and that's why teams always have these high implied run totals. For one, the starting pitching is questionable, but for two, there's just nobody that consistently can come in after the starter and not give up a boatload of runs.
Right. All right, let's go to Kansas City and Seattle. We have Danny Duffy going up against Tommy Malone. 4.5 implied total for the Royals, 4.6 for the Mariners. I did not see this coming last night. We have Danny Duffy at 7,500 as an underdog in Seattle as the highest owned pitcher on the slate. So what are you doing with that?
Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting one to pay attention to because on one hand, I've always been someone that thinks Duffy at least has talent, and he's just really difficult to figure out when he's going to put it together. But in my baseline stuff, he's actually projecting as my top pitcher. It kind of surprises me that it's that way for everyone, just because people do factor in Vegas a lot, and the Mariners do have a 4.6 implied run total. He is an underdog, like you said. That's stuff that people normally like overvalue, in my opinion. So, if he actually does come in really, really highly owned, I'd be kind of surprised. But that said, like I think he will get ownership. I just think that like Michaelis will pass him, and Corbin, maybe will pass him. But I think it's a decent spot. No Edwin Encarnacion clearly helps him here. The concern would be that he has only struck out 18.4% of righties this year. You still have 5 righties in the projected lineup, although they are all pretty bad except for Domingo Santana. 25.5% strikeout percentage against lefties. Most likely 3 out of 4 lefties at the lineup, which is nice. I think Duffy's a good play. I don't know that I would get to like 40+% of him, but I think that he's perfectly fine mid-range option.
Yeah, I thought Duffy was fine. Like he was going to be a guy that I'd look at, but if he's this popular, I would still. I mean, I'm still going to play some of Duffy regardless what he's at, but I'm not getting anywhere near 40% if he's going to stick around there. Even if he's like 25, 30%, I don't know that I'm in love with that either. So
yeah, I do want to dig into him a bit more during the day, because like I want to say 4 or 5 starts ago, I started to see some stuff that made me really interested in him, and then I thought it started to disappear. But I kind of want to see what he's doing, because at least for a while, I know he was kind of scrapping his 2-seamer and he was throwing harder. So I mean, if he's doing that still, I would have more interest.
yeah, and like where are you going to leverage against him? Tim Beck, like outside of Domingo Santana batting second for 4,600, like Beckham, Tom Murphy, Mac Williamson, like these guys are just not very good. You trade away.
I mean, those 3 at least have power, but they're more likely than not going to just strike out.
Yeah. Like the numbers for the Mariners, the active roster versus lefties this season, 27.4%. Yeah, just not a good team. They started off so hot, and they've just gone downhill ever since. And they traded away Bruce. They traded away Encarnacion this weekend. So I wouldn't expect those numbers to get too much better throughout the season. So Duffy's fine. I'm just not sure he's deserving of the highest owned pitcher, and I honestly doubt he sticks there. So keep an eye on his ownership for the shows later in the day. What about Malone at 6,900, and then any interest in the Kansas City Bats?
Malone's been surprisingly decent. Only 5 starts, but 25% strikeout percentage. Walks have been basically non-existent at 4.8%. He is giving up a lot of barrel balls, but that's okay at his price point. 3.78 PCRA is pretty good. Again, at this price point, I'm not sold. He's another one that I want to check out some stuff on Brooks Baseball throughout the day. But it is a perfectly good park for pitchers. It's a Kansas City team that I think is dangerous, but also not the scariest offense top to bottom. The bottom of their lineup in particular is pretty bad. Against left-handed pitching since the start of 2017, their active roster has struck out 23.8% of the time, 83 WRC plus, 298 WOBA. So a pretty appealing matchup in that regard. I think that I'll probably get to some Malone.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get to some of him. He's coming in at modest ownership for a sub 7K pitcher. He's at mid-teens right now. So I'm comfortable with that, especially if Michaelis is going to be the heavy chalk. Just going to a different guy because I don't really love Michaelis is something I'm interested in doing here. So, yeah, and I was surprised how much the Royals have been striking out versus lefties as well. On the season, just this season alone, 24% K rate. I had them pegged as one of the teams that doesn't strike out, but I'm thinking of them more against righties, I think.
Yeah, it also, the lineup here will make a difference too. So far this year, Malone struck out 31.7% of lefties compared to 21% of righties. If you get, all of Gordon and Duda and Lopez in here, like all 3 of those guys, then I think it helps, as opposed to if they get one more right-handed batsman.
Yep. All right. Brewers and the Padres, we have Ulysses Chassin going up against Joey Lucchesi. Chassin, $6,900. Lucchesi, $86. Low implied totals here, just 8 total on the game. 3.9 going to the Brewers, about 4.1 going to the Padres. This is a game that I don't really know if I'm going to look at much of anything here. Lucchesi, kind of in this price range where we still haven't gotten to the guy that is going to be really popular in this range, I think. But 8,600 for Lucchesi against the Brewers, tough matchup, even though he does have strikeout upside. And then Chacin, he's just kind of a whatever play for me. If I get to some of him, I'm fine. It's a righty-heavy Padres lineup, so maybe you get to some more Chacin. But either guy you're targeting here?
I think Lucchese's a really interesting tournament play.
Mm,
He's in that same price range, right between Maeda and Corbin. Obviously we haven't talked about Maeda, but Corbin, we both like. We both think he's a really good play at his price. But it's not like he has an easy matchup against Philadelphia. It's not like he's been a great, he's been great this year. He's been good. Lucchese is a good pitcher too. He has a tough matchup against Milwaukee. There's no question about it. But you get him in San Diego, and you get just a lot more ownership. I think going to Corbin and to Maeda. Lucchese has a pretty good chance of just kind of being the forgotten guy here. 22.6% strikeout percentage against right-handed hitters, 30.3 against lefties. He'll face a mostly right-handed lineup, but Christian Yelich and Mike Moustakas, two of the better hitters in the lineup, are both left-handed. He has a lot of 311 expected WOBA, 166 expected ISO to righties. He's just a decent pitcher at a decent price point. And I think that if his ownership holds around 5%, while Corbin's at 25 and Maeda is at almost 20, I think that there's certainly merit. He's a guy that you could go to if you are stacking, whatever team ends up being popular, and you don't want to get too contrarian with your hitters for whatever reason. He's the guy that you could just kind of go to and in between Corbin and Maeda.
all right. Yeah. No, you bring up good points for sure as a pivot off of a guy like Corbin. The Brewers still do strike out versus either side, but yeah, I don't mind the call. It's just a scary matchup. I guess I always get turned off going up against the Brewers, or like the idea of going up against the Brewers with a non-elite pitcher. So, yeah, the ownership's going to reflect that, though. If he's at 5%, probably not the worst play. Chacin, 6,900 here against the Padres. If we see 7 righties plus the pitcher spot here, is that a guy you're looking at all?
So, I mean, it's as good a spot as you get for Chacin in terms of righties, probably, because the Padres will probably, like you said, have almost an entire lineup full. He struck out 22% of righties this year, 321 WOBA, expected WOBA, 153 expected ISO. He's okay, I guess. I just think still that there's probably more upside in some other guys. He hasn't pitched since May 31st, so not sure how deep he'll go into the game. I'm looking to see if he pitched at AAA, if he rehabbed at all.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't think he did.
76.
So he didn't pitch. He didn't throw in the minors. He's coming back from a back injury. He threw a 45 to 50 pitch bullpen session. I don't know. It seems like it would, not that you need 100 pitches or anything out of someone at 6,900, but it seems like the most likely outcome, I would think, is that he doesn't go quite as deep as normal.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know. I think I'd rather get to Malone or someone like that in this range.
Yep.
Yeah, not much interest, as you can tell, in Chacin. You got any interest in the bats here, or are you ready to move it on to the last game?
Machado, of course, is more expensive than he was in Coors Field, so that makes sense. Not really, other than, the obvious that Renfroe and Reyes have a ton of power, so they're fine low on one-offs, but it's not a spot that I'm really seeking out.
All right, me either. Let's go to the last game. Giants and the Dodgers. Tyler Beede going up against Kenta Maeda. 3.4 implied total for the Giants, 5.3 for the Dodgers. Maeda at 9K, I would expect him to get chalkier as the day goes on. Minus 232 favorite right now. I guess the only question I have with Maeda is the pitch count with him. He's gone over 100 pitches one time. That was in March. And he's gone over 90 pitches 3 times since then. And you're seeing a lot of these like mid-70s. He got pulled at 70 a couple starts ago. So that would be the only question I have, just more of an upside thing with Maeda. They just don't let him go deep, and they're letting guys like Rich Hill go deep. So it seems specific to him as far as what the Dodgers are doing with him. But 9K here, like he is one of those guys that could give you 8 strikeouts in 5 innings and be fine for this price. But what do you plan to do with Maeda here?
Yes, I mean, the pitch count is a legitimate concern. I also think that the number of lefties in the Giants lineup has to be at least a little bit concerning. because for years now, Maeda's been one of the better pitchers against righties, but been pretty mediocre against lefties. And I don't mean like even in terms of production allowed, because with how bad the Giants are, I wouldn't really care about that. But he's only struck out 21% of lefties this year compared to almost 30% of righties. If you go back to last season, he struck out 22.6% of lefties compared to 32.3% of righties. He just doesn't get strikeouts as frequently on that side of the split. I think that his price tag is affordable. I think he's cheaper than he should be, at least from an upside standpoint. But it's not like we're getting a ton of right-handed hitters for the Giants here either. So one, you need to kind of run good and be on the right side of variance as far as him, not coming up, not getting in at bat in the sixth,
Yeah.
in the bottom of the fifth inning or something and getting pulled. And two, you need him to actually be able to strike out lefties, because at this price tag and with how many pitchers there are in this price range, you're going to need him to actually get strikeouts, because it's very unlikely that he's giving you that 8 or 9 inning complete shutout or something.
Yeah.
So I think those are the concerns. I still think that he grades out as a good play,
I
but
agree.
it's not in a perfect spot.
Yeah, I was expecting at least one more righty in for the Giants. In my head last night, I had it as 5 righties that they were going to roll out here. It looks like 4, including Tyler Beede. So maybe not as advantageous of a spot for Maeda, and that's why you're seeing the lower, or at least lower ownership than I anticipated we would see this morning. I thought he'd be the highest owned pitcher on the slate last night, but if he's going to stick around here, I've got no problem with that, just because he has 25 point upside in limited innings if things go the correct way for him. Dodgers bats against Tyler Beede. What do you think of Beede? And then obviously the Dodgers, a team with a ton of talent, ton of power. Big total here. Are they a team that you plan on getting to?
Yes. I think Beattie's got decent stuff. I am kind of surprised with how bad he's been so far. I think he's had some command issues. I think that maybe he gets those straightened out, maybe he doesn't. But this is certainly not a spot where I'm feeling confident in him figuring anything out. The Dodgers, of course, one of the best offenses in baseball. You've got some pretty reasonable price tags on guys. Bellinger's really expensive, but he should be. He's been the best hitter in baseball. Peterson's affordable, Verdugo's affordable, Turner's affordable, Muncy's whatever. And then the bottom of the order, if it's Taylor and Beede and Barnes or whatever, they're all cheap. So you can get the good parts of the Dodgers and then mix in some cheap guys so that you can still get the pitching that you want. Beede has really gotten lit up by lefties so far this year. 394 expected WOBA, 353 ISO allowed, 227 expected ISO. Only throwing 152 pitches to lefties, but again, just a lot of really good lefties here. If you go back to last season, you get an extra 100 pitches against lefties. Still some really bad numbers there. Yeah, I mean, he's got talent. Like he's got good enough stuff where if he goes out there and actually has command and is locating his pitches well, he'll be tough to hit. But we just don't have enough of a track record of him actually doing that for me to want to be getting away from the Dodgers.
Yeah, I really like the Dodgers hitters ownership right now. I mean, you're going to get Jock as a chalkier option, mid-teens right now, but then Muncy at 11, and then everyone else under 10. You got like Barnes, Verdugo, Beede, and Chris Taylor all below 3%. So it won't be too difficult to get contrarian, even though we have some favorable pricing here for the Dodgers. So I like them quite a bit as a stack, actually.
Yeah. And also, just kind of a scary thing to point out about, because Beattie's numbers this year already aren't very good. So he's faced the Reds, the Rockies, granted it was in Coors and in Great American, the Blue Jays, the Marlins, the Mets, and the Padres. He's like, if anything, he should have inflated numbers based on these matchups.
Yeah, those spots don't seem like they should be too difficult. And this is obviously a top 3 offense in baseball. So yeah, this is it's not gonna get too much easier here for him. So give me all the Dodgers, I guess. I would plan on getting to them as a top 5 stack for me pretty easily. All right, I think, that covers all the games. Get in that rake-free tournament on Yahoo. It is filling really quickly. Right now, it is at under 100 spots left. So if you want to get in that, use the promo code AWESEMO. You can find that in the Yahoo articles on the website. Cheat sheets will be out in a little while when we have projections coming out. Of course, Osmo's rankings, ownership projections will be updated throughout the day. Night slate ownership, we've got a pretty sizable night slate. I think it's 4 games tonight on DraftKings and FanDuel. So make sure you check out those night slate ownership projections. Best in the business, as our main slate ownership projections are. Lofty will have the deep dive come out later today with his favorite pitching and hitting options. Adam, you will be with Alex and Lofty, correct? This afternoon.
Yep.
You guys will be starting at
5.
4:45.
I think 5,
Okay.
but maybe.
You'll be starting at 5.
One of them started 5 for the 12 gamers. I just don't know if we've adjusted that with Alex or not.
Okay, cool. So they'll be on. Just keep an eye out for that. And then live before lock with Josh and myself. Anything else before we head out of here, Adam?
So I think just kind of a quickly like overarching or overview of the slate, at least the way I see it right now. I think it's a slate where I'm going to end up spreading out my pitching exposure, and normally I'll end up pretty concentrated on pitching, but I just think there's a lot of really similar pitching options. So guys that end up being really popular, there's a good chance I come in underweight, and then guys that are lower owned, they'll be a little bit overweight, and especially because I think that there are limited spots that I really love the hitting.
I like it. I think I agree with that as well. Going to be a slate that everything's pretty spread around, as I've been trying to do more and more. But yeah, all right. Good luck on this slate, and make sure you give us a like on your way out. It really helps us out, and hit the notification bell so you know when we go live, like we will be multiple times throughout the day. All right, see you guys. Good luck.